Okay, welcome back everyone. In this lesson we're dealing with the area of a rectangle, and I got my little pointer here because all the shapes again, we're dealing with shapes that are formed with a straight edge. So the idea with area is that we've got a shape here, and I'm recycling the same card here, and we want to work out how many square units that shape occupies. Okay, this is a two-dimensional shape. I guess I'm going to do some drawings on here now with a pen. And what I'm thinking about is how many little squares fit inside this shape. And there's my really rough drawing. They're not all the same. They should be, right? But I haven't got graph paper, but trying to understand what's happening here. I know my units need to change as well because previously we were doing just measuring the length of the lines, weren't we? And now we're actually looking at the area that shape occupies. So there's little changes here, and I'm going to write them on my little card here, just to point them out to you, because my thinking has changed here. I'm thinking about square units, okay? And so that little index with the 2 on it indicates that it's a giveaway, I guess, that we're working with area. And some of the questions that you've got are actually set up on grid lines, and to emphasize this point, and then we move away from that, and hopefully by that stage you're really settled with this idea that we're looking at the two-dimensional space that this shape occupies, and we're going to not only multiply the numbers together, but we're also going to be writing the correct units as part of our answer. So they'll be the things that I'm looking for, and those are the things that I'll be reinforcing in a moment on the whiteboard. Thank you. This video is on area, and the area is the two-dimensional space that the shape occupies. Okay, we might even, we'll get onto it in a minute, because when we talk about area, we're always also talking about land. So there's a measurement called a hectare we need to discuss in a minute, and that applies for measuring the size of paddocks and farms. But normally, like a suburban block now is measured in meters squared. So what we need to think about here is I want to just cover a little bit of algebra here. We might call one of those the lengths and the width. And to shorten this formula, what I'd like you to write is A, capital A, equals LW is a good way to write this. And now, what we're talking about, just mathematics and numbers, like I really understand, like if your block of land is 14 meters wide by 20 meters deep, it's really important that you might only have 14 meters facing the road. And so the dimensions are really important. But mathematically, if I call this width equals 5 and the length equals 6, when we plug these into the formula, we can go 6 times 5 or 5 times 6, and both those things will end up as being equal to 30. So in some sense, when you're crunching the numbers, and it's very important, I'll say that again, when you're crunching the numbers, just doing the multiplication, the order's not important. But dimensionally, when we're trying to figure out where things go and fit, then that's kind of important. So a lot of the questions here will be just dealing with applying this formula and getting the right answer. And there's something missing from here, and that's what we need to talk about next, and that is the units. So we mentioned meters squared. So whatever unit you're working with, your answer must include a couple of symbols like this: millimeters squared, centimeters squared, meters squared, and kilometers squared, because we're talking about area and we're working out. I'm just going to change the color of my pen. In this shape here, if they were little squares of exactly the same dimensions, like 1 meter by 1 meter, we could work out how many little squares in there. And I think there are some questions with little grid lines on there to allow you to do exactly that. But we need to move away from that and start thinking about just using these units. And of course, if you do not know the units, or the units are not specified, you're most welcome to write units squared. And that's a nice way to get out of just specifying the units, even though they're not included or you haven't been given enough information for them. So do those things. So we were going to talk about, I'll just divide the board up here. I always think about squares as special rectangles where all the sides are the same length. So instead of writing, when we see squares, instead of writing, you're most welcome to write length by width. I don't particularly mind, but we could change that formula ever so slightly and say length squared, because they're all the same. And we just need to multiply those two sides together. Now, I think I talked about a hectare. 1 hectare is equal to 10,000 meters squared. And what does that look like? That's a square whose sides are 100 meters by 100 meters. Okay, and it's useful, especially when you're dealing with larger areas. You might be asked to convert those to hectares, and you do that by dividing by 10,000 meters squared, and that'll get you into hectares. Just while we're here, I think it might be worth just running through a couple of little examples here. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is to draw. And quick little drawings like this don't take us long to do. And we can just include the units here. And what I would just say to you is just write out the formula, substitute in the values. It's always good practice. And don't get caught up on which side is the length and which side is the width just yet. Just get used to doing this kind of work and then writing the units as part of your answer. So that's something that I'd like to see. And I guess we can just do one square here to just show you what we mean. And I'm going to call that 2.5 centimeters. So what I'll do in this case is write L squared, and I know that I'm going to square that number. I can jump on my calculator and do it, but what I'm thinking about here is 25 squared, and I'm just going to do that here, and that's 100, that's 100, and that's 25. So that's going to be equal to, this is equal to 625, but we're doing 2.5 times 2.5. I've got to keep track of my decimal places here, and so this is going to be 6.25 centimeters squared as my final answer. So That's the work that's in front of you, and you can see quite clearly how I want you to set it out. Thank you.